Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my September 2018 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but I also do these monthly wrap-ups of just the books, because some people only want to hear about books, for whatever reason. I'm going to start with the nerdy, hardcore stats and charts and then get into what I read. In September, I read 16 books and DNF'd one additional book for a total of 5,155 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so 1,376 of those pages were actually about 43 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 11 YA books and 6 adult books. I read 14 novels, one of which I DNF'd, 2 graphic novels, and 1 novella. This month I read a little bit of everything, with contemporary taking up the majority of the pie due to Contemporary-a-thon, followed by fantasy, horror, science fiction, speculative fiction, and historical fiction. If you adjust for amount of pages in each genre, sci-fi shrinks because that was the novella. Most of these books, no surprise, came from the library, but I borrowed and bought some. I read 5 paperbacks, 4 hardcovers, 4 audiobooks, 3 ebooks, and 1 uncorrected proof. Most of these books were in the 300 to 399 pages range, and the vast majority were published this year or last year. Most of these books were by female authors, and about half of the protagonists were female, with a few male protagonists, some ensemble casts, and 1 non-binary protagonist. In terms of the setting, this was my least diverse month, and almost everything was set in America, with some other world settings and one that started in the UK. In terms of diversity, these books touched on race, feminism, disability, mental health, queer content, or a combination thereof, but a large section of them had no diversity to speak of. In terms of star ratings, this month I had 1 1-star book, 1 3-star book, 1 3.5-star book, 5 4-star books, 6 4.5-star books, and 3 5-star books. Let's start with the lowest rated read and work our way up to the highest, shall we? My 1-star read this month was obviously the one I DNF'd, and that was A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. This one, I wanted to like it so much. So many people have told me about Ursula K. Le Guin, that they really enjoy her writing, and this was actually the pick for my book club this month, so I said, perfect, I can finally read one. Here's where it fell down for me and the reason why I didn't finish it, and that is the writing style was mostly this person did this thing, and then they did this thing, and then they did this thing, and that's just not a very entertaining way to read things. There weren't very many characters in this book that I really cared about, and when there were female characters, they were just stereotypes, and after 157 pages I gave up. If you are interested in actually reading this book, it is about a boy who realizes he has some talent for magic and goes to study to be a wizard and then spends his life being a wizard. There are apparently 3 or 4 books after this as well, and I'm told that the writing gets better, but I've got other things to read. What's more relatable than a camera battery dying in the middle of a video? My 3-star read was Social Creature. This one followed a girl named Louise who is just trying to make her way in New York, and she falls into a friendship with Lavinia, a girl who is rich AF. Although I really enjoyed the writing and was really compelled by the plot of this story, there were aspects to it that made it so I really couldn't rate it any higher than a 3 because they were very problematic. There is quite a bit of sexual assault in this book, but it was never really called out as actually being a terrible thing that shouldn't happen, and there was lots of victim blaming. But you know going into this that this is going to be dark because almost from the beginning you know that eventually Lavinia is going to die, you just don't know how. If you like your dark, creepy reads that keep you wanting to know what's going to happen even though terrible, terrible things are happening, this is a book for that. My 3.5-star read this month was Dear Reader. This one starts off in a high school where the English class is reading Wuthering Heights, which is the protagonist's favorite book, and then the English teacher goes missing. The protagonist finds the teacher's copy of Wuthering Heights, but when she opens it up to read it, it has the narrative of what the teacher is doing in New York, where she's gone off to find the ghost of her recently deceased ex-boyfriend. Flannery, who's usually a goody-goody, decides to skip school and go see if she can find her teacher and help her. Going into this, I knew this was going to be obviously very bookish. It's called Dear Reader, how could it not be? But what I really appreciated is, even though I haven't read the classic that this is based around, it is explained enough in the class's discussions that I can get the references that are going on in the book. Obviously, I probably missed some things because I've never read the classic, but I also was never going to read the classic, so I was very happy with how it was laid out for me. The biggest problem I had with this is it had a very abrupt ending that was very unsatisfactory. But up until that point, it really had me guessing as to what was going to happen. On to my 4-star reads, the first one being When Dimple Met Rishi, which was one of my reads for the Contemporary-a-thon. This one follows a girl named Dimple and a boy named Rishi who meet at a coding camp during the summer before they're meant to go off to university. Unbeknownst to Dimple, but known to Rishi, their very traditional Indian parents have sent them to this camp so they can meet and maybe make a marriage match. When Rishi approaches her and says something to the effect of, "Hey, future wife," she freaks out because that's a weird thing for a stranger to say to you. And this becomes a light and fluffy contemporary hate-to-love romance. I really enjoyed that we got the dual perspectives. I found that there were little bits of the plot that I was like, why is this here? And then I was like, no, actually I'm really enjoying it. I really enjoy all the side characters. This is fine. The biggest problem I had with it was Dimple seemed to like punch Rishi on a really regular occurrence, and it wasn't cute, but it was played off as like cute and adorable. I'm like, no, punching people is not cute, not adorable. You're actually hurting him. Please stop. Perpetuates the stereotype that girls can't be physically abusive, which she was totally being. My next 4-star read was That's Not What Happened. This one centers around a school shooting and the 6 survivors of it. This one is written as one very long narrative with letters from the different survivors interwoven into it to get a more clear idea of what happened that day and what the effects of it are. It turns out that the protagonist and her best friend were both victims of the shooting, and her best friend ended up dying. Her parents are now writing a biography, but it is uninformed about what her best friend was really like. Something I really liked about this narrative is it never said the name of the shooter. If there were documents where the name of the shooter was included, such as police documents, it was blacked out. This was not a narrative trying to explain away why the shooter did what he did. This was about the people that have to deal with living past it. My next 4-star read was All Systems Red. This one is a novella about a murder bot who has disabled their security code so they can watch serialized dramas instead of murdering all humans. They're on contract to guard some humans, and then some local creatures and some outside forces are attacking their humans, and they work together with the humans to make that not be a thing. This is the first in a series, and when the rest of the series comes out, I would love to read it because it was good times. My next 4-star read was Running with Lions. This is a queer romance between 2 boys at a soccer camp. What I loved about this one is it had a very diverse cast. The team in question is at least a quarter queer or questioning because the coach has a nephew who came out and then found some adversity at the school that he was at because all of the teams basically kicked him off for being queer. And this coach will have none of that bullshit. This is also a hate to love because the protagonist and the love interest actually used to be best friends when they were young and then fell out of their friendship. It was cute, it was queer, it was lovely. You should read it. My last 4-star read was The Library at Mount Char. This one is disturbing AF. Going into this, I didn't really know much besides it had a library in it and very easy to please. And at the beginning it seemed like it had to do with a cult, but it turned out to be so much bigger than that. Basically there is a character called the Father, and he has 12 adopted children, and each of these children is responsible for learning one of the catalogs of his library. Our protagonist Carolyn is learning the languages, so she's learning literally every language, whereas other people have catalogs in medicine or warfare or so forth. This book doesn't shy away from just being strange half the time, but also does not shy away from being gruesome with murders and suicides and death and assaults and lots of grossness. However, it's incredibly imaginative, and if I were just to say some of the things that happen in this book, they would seem like they were so off the wall, and yet in the narrative they made sense. I actually picked this one up because it was discussed as being the potential October read on the Poptimist Discord channel, which reminds me that I haven't read Discord in a very long time, so that might have changed, but I read it anyway. Discord is just a weird app. If it doesn't send me notifications, I forget that it's a thing. On to my 4.5-star reads, the first 2 of those being the Backstages Volume 1 and 2. This is a really cute fantasy graphic novel set in the real world but with fantastical elements about these people that work backstage in an all-boys school theater department, where the backstage is full of these rooms that are fantastical and they move around and they're really easy to get lost in. There's a confirmed male-male romance. There's a character that I'm pretty sure must be trans because he transferred from an all-girls school to an all-boys school. And I really just want to read the rest of the series. My library just doesn't have it yet and I want it so bad. My next 2 books were also part of a series, Calling on Dragons and Talking to Dragons. These are part of the Enchanted Forest Chronicles, and I found out while I was doing a little bit of research that the first book that was written in this series was actually Talking to Dragons, which is the last book in the series. So she published what is now book number 4 back in 1985, and then published 1, 2, and 3 in the 90s. This follows a cast of characters in an enchanted forest. There are magicians, there are wizards, there are witches, there are dragons, there are knights, there are kings. It is wonderful, it is feminist. It started out in the first book of the series with a girl who just didn't want to do regular princess things, so she ran away to live with dragons. It's incredibly witty and humorous, and you should just read it. My next 4.5-star read was A Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, which is coming out, I believe, on Tuesday, if not in October. I was very fortunate to read an early copy of this. This is the follow-up to A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue and follows Felicity, who is Monty's little sister. And basically she wants to be a doctor, but it's in a time frame, the 1700s where ladies just aren't allowed to do that. It's feminist, it's queer, it's full of adventures just like the first one. And of course, Monty and his beau show up a time or two as well. My last 4.5-star read was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I did not realize this was not a standalone until I finished it and went, but where's the rest of it? And the rest of it, or at least the second book in the series, comes out on the 2nd of October. Unfortunately, it takes a while for my library to receive and catalog books, so it's going to be a little while before I can read it, but I'm still very excited. This book centers around Laszlo Strange, who was an orphan who grew up with some cruel monks, and when he escaped them, he worked as a librarian. Since he was very young, he's always loved stories, and he's always had these dreams about this place in a far-off land called Weep. Above that city of Weep is a floating citadel where the gods used to live, and now, unbeknownst to the citizens below, some of their children still live. The writing in this book is so beautiful, and the imagery is incredibly exquisite and delightful, and I just want to read the rest of it now. The characters are complex, and it's written in such a way that you can understand both sides of the story, but you just want everyone to get along. I had seen people talking about this and then saw that it was like a 600-page book and went, yes, I will eventually get to that, but listening to it as an audiobook, it's only 18 hours, and you can speed that up. It was fine. Also, Steve West's voice is really good, and he did great accents for all the different characters. Highly recommend. On to my 5-star reads, the first one being Sadie, which has a dual perspective. The first one being a crime podcast about the death of Sadie's sister Maddie and Sadie's disappearance, and then the other perspective being Sadie herself. She has gone off on a mission to find the man that she is pretty sure murdered her little sister. One night I thought I was just going to start this book, but then I sat there and ended up finishing the entire thing, only getting up to get more soup, more water, and bathroom breaks. Sadie is on this mission that pings her back and forth between these different towns trying to find this man. And the podcast is trying to recreate where she went months after this. It's dark, it's compelling, trigger warnings for child abuse. And obviously I couldn't put it down. It's a 5-star read. Pick it up. If you have a chance, the audiobook is done with a full cast narration during the podcast part, so I'm told it's very, very good. My library just didn't have it, so I had to make that up in my head, just like everything else I read. My camera is trying to die on me again, so we're gonna do these last 2 books quick. My second to last 5-star read of the month was An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I've been waiting for this book for over 2 years because I read some of the early chapters on Patreon. I was so excited for it that I actually wrote a book about it where I took the melody of Accio Deathly Hallows and rewrote it to be about an absolutely remarkable thing. If you're interested in that, I will link it in places. This book is about April May, who's a graphic designer and finds herself walking home real late after work one night and sees this giant statue, and she almost passes it by as one of those remarkable things that is always happening in New York, but instead calls her friend Andy and they make a YouTube video where they are interviewing the statue, which she decides is named Carl. She wakes up the next morning to find out that there isn't just one of these statues, there are 64 of these statues, and they're all around the world and nobody knows how they got there. Since her YouTube video goes viral, she becomes one of the people to go to when talking about this issue and where do they come from and why are they here. And this incredible internet fame is where you can see Hank really putting what he knows about the world into his books because he has lived a lot of the things he ends up talking about. Either that or he's followed it closely while it's happened to other people. This book discusses wanting to be the first person to do something, ad hominem attacks, internet fame, what that does to you and those around you. And because I know things can change from draft to draft, and obviously I read a draft from a very long time ago, I was excited to see that April May was still a bi girl in a female-female relationship. I tore through this one. I'm actually on hold for the audiobook from my library, so I'll probably listen to it a couple of weeks from now when it becomes available to me, and I cannot wait for the second book in this duology. And my final 5-star read of this month was Anger is a Gift by Marco Shiro. This one takes place in Oakland, California, and it centers around a black character named Moss who meets a really cute boy on the train, after which he has a slight panic attack because there's a protest going on. It turns out that 6 years previous, Moss lost his father to a police shooting where his father was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and, you know, was black. This book goes back and forth between this new romance and the atrocious things that are happening in Moss's school, where the school is treating the students like prisoners. Instead of using their limited funding for teaching materials, they have cops on site who randomly abuse students. This situation escalates, and there are so many heartbreaking things that happen in this book. I knew I was going to like this book because the person I saw talking about it first gave it 7 out of 5 stars, but this is definitely a 5 out of 5 stars. We also had a protagonist who was unafraid to show his emotions. We spent a lot of time with Moss where he was upset or he was anxious or both of those things at the same time. And I find it very important to find protagonists that are unafraid to show their emotions, especially male ones, because we don't see that often enough. We also have a male protagonist who has body image issues, which is another thing we do not see enough of because it's definitely out there, it's just not represented. So obviously I had a great reading month. I really loved the majority of what I read this month. If you want to hear me talk more about these books or other books for that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always linked down below. If you've read any of these, please let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!